Mhm. My cousin Adele's wedding was supposed to be the happiest Saturday of the year, and for about 45 minutes, it actually was. The venue was this renovated barn outside of Columbus, the kind of place that costs more than my monthly take-home but looks genuinely beautiful when the string lights come on at dusk. Adele had been planning this for 2 years. The centerpieces had dried pampas grass and little white candles. The DJ was already setting up when I arrived. My aunt had been crying happy tears since noon. I was in a pale green wrap dress I'd bought specifically for this day, holding a glass of sparkling water because I was driving, standing near the cocktail hour table with my cousin Brett and his girlfriend, laughing about something that had nothing to do with family drama or money or any of the things that had been quietly eating at me for the past 6 months. And then my mother walked over. She had that look on her face. The one I've known since I was 9 years old. Lips pressed together, chin slightly up, eyes scanning the room like she's about to manage something. She kissed me on the cheek and immediately pulled me a few steps away from Brett, the way you do when you're about to say something you don't want other people to hear. "I talked to your father this morning," she said. "I want you to understand what that sentence means in our family. My parents have been divorced since I was 14. They don't talk unless something has gone wrong. And something going wrong in our world usually involves my younger brother, Owen. Owen is 28. He has never, in his adult life, held a job for longer than 14 months. Not because the jobs weren't there, not because the economy was cruel to him specifically, but because Owen genuinely believes that the right opportunity is always just around the corner, and that whatever situation he's currently in is beneath him, and that the people in his life, meaning me, should be willing to float him while he waits for the universe to catch up to his potential. I love my brother. I want to say that clearly. But I have also been loving my brother at significant financial cost to myself for the better part of 4 years. And I was, at that specific moment, in that barn, in my green dress, completely done. "What happened?" I said. It wasn't really a question. My mother glanced toward the main hall where Adele and her fiancé were taking photos. Then she looked back at me. "He lost the apartment." I felt something go very still inside me. Owen had been renting a 1-bedroom in Westerville, nothing fancy, just a clean, quiet place about 20 minutes from where our dad lives. The rent was $1,150 a month. I knew exactly what it was because for the past 5 months, I had been paying half of it. That was the arrangement. Owen was getting back on his feet after leaving a marketing job he called soul-crushing, and I was supposed to help him get stabilized and then he'd take it from there. He had not taken it from there. "He is 3 months behind," my mother said. "The landlord gave him until the end of the month." 3 months. I had been sending him $575 every first of the month like clockwork. He was 3 months behind. Which meant he had been taking my money and not putting it toward the rent. "Where did the money go?" I said. She did the thing where she tilts her head and looks sad. "He's been struggling, sweetheart. You know how he gets." I know exactly how he gets. That's the problem. I took a long sip of my sparkling water. Around me, people were laughing, clinking glasses, complimenting each other's outfits. Adele floated past in her dress and grabbed my free hand and squeezed it and said, "I'm so glad you're here," and kept moving because she was the bride and she had 100 people to love today, and I smiled at her back and felt something tighten in my throat. "I can't talk about this right now," I told my mother. "It's Adele's wedding." "I know," she said. "I just wanted you to be prepared. Your father wants to have a conversation about next steps." "After the wedding," I said. She nodded. She seemed relieved, actually, like she'd accomplished what she came over to do. I went back to Brett and his girlfriend and I laughed at the right moments for the next 2 hours. I watched Adele walk down the aisle on our uncle's arm. I cried a little during the vows, genuinely, because Adele and her husband are 2 people who actually chose each other, and there's something about watching that happen that hits differently when your own family feels like a trap. The dinner was where everything went off the rails. I was seated at a table with my mother, my father's girlfriend, Sandra, my Aunt Bev, who is my mother's sister, and 2 cousins I barely know from my father's side. It was the kind of seating arrangement that happens when divorced parents both have to be somewhere and the bride is trying her very best. My father waited until the salad course. He leaned across the table, past Sandra, past the bread basket, past the little card that said Adele and Chris forever, and he said, quietly but not quietly enough. So your mother told you about the situation. She mentioned it, I said. We think the best solution is for him to move into your place temporarily while he gets sorted. I put my fork down. My place. My condo. The 847 square foot, 2-bedroom condo that I bought 14 months ago after saving for 6 years. The condo I had sacrificed vacations and new cars and approximately 900 small pleasures to be able to afford. The condo that was mine. He can sleep on the couch, my father said, just until he finds something new. 2 months, maybe 3. My mother nodded from across the table like this was a plan they'd discussed and agreed upon, which meant they had definitely discussed and agreed upon it, which meant this had been arranged before anyone sat down tonight. We can't just let him end up on the street, my mother said. I looked at my Aunt Bev, who was staring very hard at her salad. I looked at Sandra, who had the careful expression of a woman who knows better than to involve herself in other people's family business. I looked at my father, who was watching me with that particular brand of expectation that means he's already decided the answer is yes. He's family, my father said, and you have this space. I thought about the second bedroom. I had converted it into a home office 8 months ago. I had a desk and a bookshelf and a reading chair in there. I worked from home 3 days a week. I had built that room into something that was mine, in a home that was mine, that I had paid for entirely on my own without any help from either of the 2 people sitting across from me right now. I need to think about it, I said. What's there to think about? My father said. My mother said, gently, it wouldn't be forever. It's never forever. It's never just 2 months. I had been doing this in small increments for 4 years. And somehow Owen was still not standing on his own feet. And somehow I was still the solution. And somehow you'd that still the lution. And somehow this dinner table at my cousin's wedding had become a negotiation. I picked my fork back up. Let me think about it, I said again. My father made a sound that wasn't quite a sigh and wasn't quite a scoff. Sandra put her hand on his arm. I ate my salad. The dressing was very good. Lemon vinaigrette. Here's what neither of my parents knew. 3 weeks before Adele's wedding, I had accepted a job offer in Portland, Oregon. A significant offer, a senior analyst position with a salary that was $22,000 more than what I was making at a company I'd been trying to get into for 2 years. I had a start date of the 15th of the following month. I had already talked to a realtor. I had already had the listing photos taken. My condo had gone on the market 10 days before this wedding. I had not told my parents, my brother, or anyone in my immediate family because I had learned slowly and painfully over years that telling my family anything in advance meant giving them time to create a plan around it. As of the previous Thursday, I had an accepted offer on the condo. We were 3 weeks from closing. I had known, sitting in the barn during cocktail hour, that my mother was going to tell me something about Owen. I had not known it would be at a wedding, in front of my father, with a full audience of relatives who would now feel like they'd witnessed something they needed to weigh in on. I had not known it would feel quite this orchestrated, but I had known it was coming. And I had made sure, very quietly over the preceding weeks, that there was nothing left to negotiate over. The main course arrived. Chicken or salmon, and the salmon was excellent. My father tried twice more during the meal. Once to mention that Owen was really trying this time, and once to say that family steps up in hard times, which I let pass without comment both times. My mother watched me carefully, looking for the give in my expression. There wasn't one. After dinner, when the tables were being cleared and the DJ started up and people moved toward the dance floor, my father found me by the bar. I need an answer, he said. He has to be out in 2 weeks. I know, I said. So you'll do it. I set my glass down on the bar. I had been thinking about how to say this for weeks, not because I wanted to perform it, but because I knew this moment was coming, and I'd found that when I played things out in my head enough times, I stopped getting emotional. I just got clear. Dad, I said, the condo is sold. He stared at me. I accepted a job in Portland? I've been in the process for about 2 months. The listing went up 10 days ago and I accepted an offer on Thursday. I'm closing in 3 weeks and moving the week after that. The band played something with a lot of bass. Someone laughed very loudly near the dance floor. "You're moving," he said. "Yes, you didn't tell us." "No," I said, "I didn't." He was quiet for a moment. I watched him process it, the pieces rearranging, the plan dissolving. "So what is Owen supposed to do?" he finally said. And this is the part I had thought about the most. "I don't know, Dad," I said. And I meant it. But that's the same question I've been sitting with about myself for 4 years, and I figured it out. I think he can too. I could tell he wanted to be angry. I could see it move across his face, the frustration, the sense that I had been withholding something he was owed. And maybe he had a right to some version of that feeling. But I also thought about every time I'd said, "Let me think about it," and ended up with less money and more obligation. And I thought about the $575 a month that went somewhere other than Owen's rent. And I thought about 6 years of saving, of not going anywhere, of making choices that compounded slowly and quietly into something real. My mother appeared at my father's elbow a moment later. She must have read his face immediately. "What happened?" she said. My father looked at me. I let him tell her. I watched her go through it. The confusion first, then the pieces connecting, then something that looked less like anger and more like a recalculation. She was trying to figure out when this had started, how far back it went, what she'd missed. "Why didn't you tell us?" she said. "Because I needed to make this decision without it becoming a committee meeting," I said. She didn't have an answer for that. I stayed for the rest of the reception. I danced with Adele. I watched my cousin and her husband cut the cake and smash a little piece of it gently into each other's faces, laughing, and it was genuinely wonderful. I said goodbye to Brett and his girlfriend. I hugged my Aunt Bev, who held on an extra second and didn't say anything, just nodded, which meant she understood more than she let on. My mother found me near the coat check at the end of the night. "I'm not angry," she said, which is something people say when they are at least a little angry. "Okay," I said. "I just wish you'd talk to us." I looked at her. She was my mother. She had loved me in all the complicated ways that parents do, and she had also spent years treating my stability like a resource to be redistributed. And both of those things were true at the same time. "I love you, Mom," I said, "but every time I've talked to you about something before it was settled, it stopped being mine. So I stopped talking first and started deciding first." She was quiet for a moment. "Is Portland good?" she said finally. "I think it's going to be great," I said. She nodded. She didn't hug me again. We walked out to the parking lot and got into our separate cars and went our separate ways, which is maybe the most honest description of our relationship I can give you. Owen called me the following Tuesday. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that was 4 minutes long, covering a range of topics, including how I'd blindsided the family, how he'd always counted on me, how I was abandoning him, and finally, near the end, something quieter and more tired sounding, something that might have been the beginning of understanding that he was going to have to figure something out for himself. I didn't call him back that day. I spent the week packing. I had fewer boxes than I expected. 6 years of deliberate living means you don't accumulate as much as you'd think. My reading chair went into a pod. My desk, the bookshelf. I called Owen the following Sunday. "I'm not your safety net," I said, "but I'm also not disappearing. If you get somewhere stable and you want to talk, I'm here. I just can't be the plan anymore." He didn't say much. But he didn't hang up either. 3 weeks later, I closed on the condo. The wire hit my account at 2014 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I was sitting in my mostly empty living room on a camping chair I'd borrowed from a neighbor, eating a sandwich, watching the Columbus skyline through windows I'd looked at for 14 months. The number in my account was more than I'd ever had in one place in my life. I finished the sandwich. I washed the plate. I left the key on the counter. And I drove toward Portland with the windows down, which I know is a cliché. But sometimes clichés exist because they're the truest description of how something feels, and what it felt like was this. Like I had finally stopped waiting for permission and started just going. We're always curious. Where in the world are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments below. And if this story hit close to home, you know what to do. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since that night. Not in a dramatic way, just in the quiet, practical way you start to see patterns when you finally have enough distance from something. Owen didn't end up the way he did because he was unlucky, and I didn't end up in Portland because I was lucky. Those outcomes were both built slowly, over years, out of choices that seemed small at the time but weren't. He chose again and again to wait, to assume someone would catch him, to treat the effort of building something as optional. I chose again and again to show up, to the job I didn't love yet, to the savings account that felt pointless some months, to the discomfort of saying no to things I wanted so I could have something I needed more. Neither of us was handed anything. We just kept making the next choice, and the choices compounded. What I've come to understand is that integrity isn't really about the big moments. It's not about standing up at a wedding dinner and making a speech. It's about the 14 months before that, the decision not to tell my parents about the job offer, not because I was hiding something shameful, but because I had finally learned that my decisions belonged to me first. That's not coldness. That's a boundary built out of self-respect, and self-respect is something you have to practice like a skill. I wasn't born knowing how to do it. I learned it the hard way, one $575 transfer at a time. The intelligence piece is something I think about too, not book intelligence. I mean the kind of thinking that asks, what is actually happening here, underneath what's being said? When my mother pulled me aside during cocktail hour, I already knew the shape of the conversation before she finished the first sentence. That kind of reading, of situations, of people, of patterns, takes time to develop. You have to be willing to see things clearly even when clarity is uncomfortable. Owen was never stupid. He was just unwilling to look at his own patterns honestly. And my parents, for all their good intentions, had spent years helping him avoid that reckoning. The most loving thing I ever did for my brother was stop being available for that avoidance. Resilience to me isn't toughness. It's not about not feeling things. I cried at Adele's vows. I sat in my empty condo on a camping chair eating a sandwich and felt something enormous and unnamed move through me when that wire hit my account. Resilience is just continuing, making the next decision, not requiring the circumstances to be perfect before you act. I moved to Portland without knowing a single person there. I did it because the alternative was staying in a life that had started to feel like it was built around everyone else's needs, with mine as an afterthought. The cause was 6 years of quiet, deliberate choices. The effect was a number in my account and a car pointed west with the windows down. If you're somewhere in the middle of your own version of this, still sending the money, still showing up to the lunches, still waiting for someone to notice that you're the one holding everything together, I just want to say, the exit doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be a confrontation at a wedding reception with your father leaning across a breadbasket. It can be quiet. It can be planned. It can be already done before anyone knows to try to stop it. Start with one decision that's entirely yours. See how that feels.